Hello, hello, everyone. This is the Armchair Warlord live now with Katala Laris to bring you the latest updates on the war in Ukraine.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, so first of all, before we start off, I'd like to say hello to the chat. We already have Brian Shearer and Josh Green in the chat. Hello, everyone. Brian Shearer is an excellent comics artist, well known for his work on Transformers and his new indie series Gunship Thunder Punch. Which I'm not much of a Transformers person, but Katala definitely is. So,
yeah, he knows. AW definitely knows. There's been a few rants.
Yeah, right.
I'm not the only one, but few, right? I'm probably the most huffy one.
Favre gets pretty bad though.
That is fair. All you have to do is say the letters IDW, and he flips. It's great.
Brian saying you love Prime Starscream.
No, absolutely the frick not. What is wrong with you?
But unfortunately, the subject of war crimes against the Transformers franchise is an entirely different stream, which we'll be doing much later. We're here to talk about the actual war. So
much later, and probably on my channel.
Yeah. So to drive us back on topic, just to introduce our subject. So 15 days ago, after I'd characterize it as a significant breakdown in negotiations over the future status of the Donbass and Crimea. Russia invaded Ukraine, and the war has been going on for the last 15 days.
Is it only 15?
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks. Seems like a lot longer.
It does. I was going to say, I can't believe it's only been 15 days. My goodness.
Yeah, God. Yeah. So I've been monitoring the progress of the fighting closely since then, and
yeah, it's been really interesting and brain damaging.
a little bit, yeah. Honestly, I'd say the war is going on the ground. The war is going about the sort of way I would have expected it to. There have been a few tactical and operational surprises. The surprising thing is what I would call the cringe war. The online
commentary going on Twitter has been incredible, to put it mildly.
Yeah, we've seen. Because we saw it previously in 2020 with BLM, and we also saw it with COVID, and that there's the powers that be can throw certain switches to make certain issues into a global priority, at least a priority across the West. And all of a sudden, a land war in Eastern Europe between two Eastern European countries with a lot of history between them is a global event. And
you're seeing, I think that happened. They flipped the switch and made this the only thing that matters, because Pfizer was court-ordered / forced to release their data on their quote-unquote vaccine.
Oh yeah, that's disturbing.
They wanted to keep people from looking at that.
Yeah, which speaking of biological weapons, this, I don't think I have any tabs pulled over for this, but this was the most insane development of the war so far. I don't know, about 2 days in, there was some crazy people posting on Twitter, this is just crazy Anon, Pepe avatar stuff, saying, "Hey, we think the Russians are striking U.S.-backed bio labs in Ukraine." And people sort of laughed about this for the next couple of weeks, and the usual debunking articles came out saying this was completely false. And then yesterday happened.
Yeah, yesterday they confirmed that yes, there are 20 biolabs, 23.
Yeah. So I think it was either yesterday or 2 days ago, but in testimony before the United States Senate, I think it was the Foreign Relations Committee, I think it was the Secretary of State, maybe, or very senior Biden administration official confirmed in sworn testimony that the United States had been funding biological labs doing research into pathogens of some kind, God knows what, in the Ukraine. 23 of them, and moreover, like this, you sort of backtrace this to the original Schizo posting, and the Schizo posts were based on the fact that the U.S. State Department had a page up. The embassy in Ukraine on their webpage had a section of that webpage devoted to biological research, and they had scrubbed that entire thing right after the invasion started.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, so I mean, the key question here is what, and I haven't followed the exact details of what the claims are versus what, but my understanding is that the State Department is now claiming, oh, well, these labs were studying, relatively benign research, but we started funding this program in 2005 to clean up like old Soviet bio labs, which, I mean, I
mean, you could say that, but I'm not sure I believe it.
Yeah, it's like, how long does it take to clean up a like you could destroy a national bioweapons program with a couple of jugs of bleach, right? Pathogens don't take much to kill. The fact that this was a ongoing near 20-year program, it makes me it raises some really serious questions about like compliance with the Biological Weapons Convention. I think we as the American people require answers as to exactly what was occurring there, and not the usual bullshit line, because, and moreover, we were lied to. We know we were lied to about what was going on there. So this is extremely concerning. And particularly the State Department's claim that the contents of these laboratories absolutely cannot fall into Russian hands. Well, why not? If they're just researching the common cold, then I think that wouldn't be so much of an issue. After all, we trust the Russians to have a sample of smallpox, right?
I mean, I'm not sure we trust them, but we have pretty much ignored it thus far. So
I mean, they have it dating from the Soviet Union. We can't really go and take it from them, but still, the Russians have an actual smallpox sample.
I mean, considering how widespread smallpox has been historically, I would be surprised if I would honestly have been surprised if they didn't have it.
Yeah. And I mean, God, this ties into, I don't know, us funding sketchy biolabs in China that may or may not have produced certain diseases that we can't talk about on YouTube. I'll probably be lucky if this stream doesn't get banned.
Right, we already talked about it.
Yeah, but so also in other, we'll go over some lighter news, and then we'll get into the more serious discussion of how the battle's been moving. So over the last week, the Russians have deployed both the oldest and the newest weapons in their arsenal. This is what's on stream right now is an armored train they rolled out. And this guy is this is a guy on a Zu-23 on top of an armored train. This is just delightfully World War II. So this caused a minor flap when this thing rolled out and got photographed.
I imagine so.
Yeah. And also this was, let me see, I'll talk about that later. Not that. They're saying that one of these things, this is an Su-57. This is the Russian F-22. Was captured on video. Was caught on video doing an airstrike in western Ukraine a couple of days ago.
That was. I knew it wasn't an F-22.
Yeah, this is an Su-57. The Russians have been working on it for a while, and they've kind of just started serial production. It's
gotcha.
Unless they're really lying about what the specifications are, it's a very impressive aircraft. And apparently it can drop bombs, because that's what That's what it's doing here. There is some dispute over whether this is a. Some people were saying this might have been an Su-34, which is like a Russian F-15E, but
Oliver,
judging by
are you
the
going to whine?
yeah, but Su-34s have canards and they have a very prominent rear-facing radar spike. This doesn't look like it has either of them. This looks also apparently that the sound profile of this sounds a lot like an Su-57. So. Give me 1 second here. I have some coffee in my percolator and I have to turn it down. Sorry. Well, and speaking of the, and now that we're on the subject of the cringe war, this is both a. Yeah, Quarter goes. Yeah, you're right. That looks like a terrible position to have. Just sitting on a train running around during the Russian winter.
Yeah.
Exposed like that.
I don't do well with cold weather, and yeah, that's a no from me.
Not to mention you're manning a thoroughly obsolete hand-laid anti-aircraft weapon, which
that too.
Yes, it's really more like for just more for making yourself feel better than for anything else.
It's like a comfort blanket, except it's a comfort gun.
Yeah. Like, is that really going to do much against like any attack aircraft? No, but it makes everyone feel better.
He's his prime target. Yeah, it is.
Yep. Well, and I have a.
Oh my god! I'm looking at this stream right now, and what the fuck is that?
So this is the one of the latest tweets from the cringiest account on Twitter, which is the account for the White House pets. This is an account for Joe Biden's dog.
Something I'm noticing? If that was actually taken at the White House, that photo of that dog, number one, that's a puppy.
Yeah.
So if that was taken at the White House, he changed dogs again.
Yeah, he got a new one recently.
I mean, he got rid of the one. What was it? Wasn't its name Major?
Yeah.
Yeah, he got rid of that one.
The other one was biting literally everyone.
Yeah, one died, and the other one was biting people left and right, and so he got rid of the one that was biting people.
Yeah, so he got a new dog recently, but so the Oval Office Twitter account has been just the insane person who controls this account has been going nuts recently, and I want to use. So first of all, this is an this tweet is just pure cringe. But second of all, I want to use this to lead into an incident that was like geopolitical cringe. Did you hear all about the MiG-29 imbroglio?
I did not hear about that, but I did hear about some other things.
So what's been being? Oh God, Brian, you're completely correct.
Dear, that's a great comment.
Yeah, Brad Shearer says Biden's dog will sniff people less than Biden. He's not wrong.
No, Biden's, for whatever reason, Biden thinks he has to sniff everyone. But mostly little girls.
Yeah, he's a kindred spirit with that. He's more of a bloodhound than a German Shepherd.
Yeah, why doesn't he have bloodhounds? He should have bloodhounds if he's going to sniff everyone.
Right. But on the topic of the Polish MiG, so over the last 2 weeks, the topic of imposing some kind of no-fly zone in Ukraine has been being bandied. I guess NATO doing this has been bandied about in various prominent circles in the West, and it went from being a crazy conspiracy theory again to a serious policy proposal. In about the usual 48 hours, and of course the problem is that yes, I think it might have actually been more like 12.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, people were giving Clint Ehrlich tons of shit for saying, this no-fly zone thing is a conspiracy theory, and then like 12 hours later, Marco Rubio was tweeting about it.
It's because they were giving Ehrlich shit because they knew it was not just a conspiracy theory, like, for real.
Yeah, it's because they were guilty. It's a consciousness of guilt. However, the small problem with imposing a quote no-fly zone unquote in over Ukraine is that the fact that this would involve NATO planes and U.S. Air Force planes flying into Ukraine to shoot down Russian planes.
Josh graded, that is terrible and terrifying. He says, I think those are attack cop dogs to protect him from Kamala. It explains why they would be in the bathroom with him, because Mrs. Biden can't always be with him. She knows Kamala would push him down the stairs.
Oh God.
Wow, sir.
Wow. And the sad thing is that our quality of leadership wouldn't get any better.
No, it
have you
wouldn't.
Seen some of the speeches?
It would actually probably get worse.
Have you seen some of the speeches that Kamala's been giving?
Yes, I have. It's cringe every time. I rearrange. I have to go and lay down afterwards every time I watch one.
I think she gave one speech that was literally like, Ukraine is a country in Eastern Europe, and Russia is a bigger country in Eastern Europe.
Yes, she did. That is on record, on a recording, on a video of her saying that. It's and the look on her face, you can clearly tell she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah, it's like oh my God. That this is the fact that our first female vice president in American history is somebody who is just completely unqualified for the job is actually embarrassing.
Brian Shearer, Russia is a big country, Kamala.
Yes. It's like,
yes. That was literally what she said, and I went, oh my God, please shut up.
It's like that. Thanks Solzhenitsyn. That's an amazing insight about Russia.
Right? Pain and suffering. That's what it was.
Yes. So to just illustrate the general competence of like American diplomacy during this crisis. So again, because nobody wants to literally start a war with the Russians by trying to impose a no-fly zone, because even as insane as the EU has been being, and even as insane as American politics have been being recently, nobody's like, there's still apparently somebody at the Pentagon, maybe, I don't even know, like, who looked at the correlation of forces and was like, this is not going to physically work, and moreover, the Russians have like 6,000 nuclear bombs. So maybe we shouldn't start a war with them, because there's a significant chance this could turn out really badly.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you how this started. The State Department, led by Anthony Blinken, our fabulous Secretary of State, who's dumb as a rock, decided, well, we'll come up with a scheme to see if we can get NATO members who used to be in the Warsaw Pact, who own Soviet aircraft, to give these aircraft to Ukraine, so that way the Ukrainians can rebuild their air force. Notwithstanding, this plan wouldn't work anyways, because the Russians would just shoot all these new aircraft down the same way they shot all the Ukrainians' old aircraft down. But that's beside the point, right?
Yeah.
So he was going around. So like between Anthony Blinken and the Ukrainian government, they were like, so like first the Ukrainian government I think said like, oh, we thank the Polish government for giving us these aircraft, and the Polish government was like, absolutely not, we're not doing it. And then Anthony Blinken came out and said the U.S. had greenlit the Polish government to give Ukraine these aircraft. The Poles, like, as near as I could tell, they sort of looked at him funny, and then they put out a press release which said, we will turn these aircraft, these like 30 MiG-29s, over to the United States if we'll fly them to Ramstein Air Base in Germany and turn them over to the United States if the U.S. gives us new F-16s to replace them. And then
which makes sense. I mean, they can't be without their Air Force.
Yes, like the Poles are like using these airplanes, right? But well, then the Poles having said, yes, we'll do it, bro, but we're not going to like hand them off ourselves. You have to do it. So now that the hot potato got passed back to the State Department. Well, then what happened was the U.S. Department of Defense came down. They said, this is a terrible idea and we're not doing it. And then the State Department came back and said, like, oh, this plan has been scrapped, we're not doing it. Which, what this tells me is that this isn't even like the different agencies within nothing about the U.S., what the U.S. government is doing right now is even coordinated, right? We have like different federal agencies running foreign policy at cross purposes to each other. Yeah. And by the way, this all played out over the course of like 12 hours, 2 days ago. Brown Shearer says Poland has a truck and totally will help you move. Yes, that's basically how this worked out.
Pretty much.
And I mean, just never mind like the idea that after the Russians shot the entire Ukrainian Air Force out of the sky, they already had like 30 MiG-29s, and the Russians blew them up in like 12 hours. The notion that giving them 30 more is going to do anything is ridiculous. Like we're just like, the only thing we'd be doing would be painting kill counters on the side of Russian Su-27s.
Pretty much.
But
apparently people don't understand that right now.
They literally don't. It's kind of disturbing. And part of this is due to a very large-scale basically PSYOPs campaign, run by, I'd say started by the Ukrainians and sort of run by very much like aided and abetted by big tech.
Well, in willful ignorance about Russia's anti-air capabilities.
Yeah, it's just an ongoing, increasingly desperate attempt by the Ukrainians to get foreign intervention, which is the only possible way they're going to win the war at this point. Is if like NATO intervenes large scale in support of them. And in order to do this, they've been resorting to increasingly desperate measures to attempt to get some kind of a foreign intervention. Part of this is their large information warfare campaign targeted at the West, where they're creating the impression that they're doing better on the battlefield than they actually are, and part of this is screaming bloody murder about a number of incidents in which they're on the battlefield in which they've been pretty heavily culpable, like the one which supplied the thumbnail image of this. This is the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. Josh Grainer says if they want help, maybe they should stop saying they're winning. Yeah, I mean, if you believe Ukrainian Twitter, they don't need any help.
Right.
So this is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, and so this is in the town of Energodar. It's got six units, produces about 6 gigawatts of power, and it's a extremely large nuclear facility. Well, the Russians were going through that area, and they're not going to just leave the place alone. So they sent some troops in to secure the facility. And guess who was waiting for them when they sent troops in? This little column you can see here. There's some Russian BTRs down in the parking lot of the facility. Well, guess what happened when the Russians sent some troops to to bring the facility under their control. I'll tell you what happened. There were some Ukrainian troops there who, rather than, I don't know, turning the facility over and not having a gun battle near 6 nuclear reactors, decided to start shooting RPGs at them. Which means that the Russians... Yeah. So there was a major gun battle involving, like, heavy weapons at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, because the Ukrainians just had to decide to fight out of a nuclear power plant. And by the way, while this was happening, while this gun battle was happening, the Ukrainian government started releasing official statements saying that reactors had been breached and there had been a massive radiation release, and that NATO intervention was needed urgently to prevent this entire plant from being destroyed and releasing radioactive contamination all over the countryside. Well, as it actually happened, none of this was true. The Ukrainian government was lying, and they were essentially trying to create... I mean, as near as I can tell, they tried to create a nuclear incident in order to provoke NATO intervention. Yeah. Brian Shearer says some things in there don't react well to bullets. The Russians literally, like, found themselves on a Call of Duty level, except real and with actual people shooting at them. I'm very thankful. Now, fortunately, the Ukrainians were not stupid enough to actually try to fight out of the reactor buildings. They were fighting out of, like, a secondary building in the complex. But still, very scary. Yeah, if you've wondered why my tone on the Ukrainian government is soured considerably over the last few streams, well, it's because of stuff like this.
Yeah, it's been basically nothing but a dog and pony circus this entire time.
It's been a goat rope. Also, let's see. I'll show those videos later.
Brashear says some things there don't react well to bullets, and then he says, "Please tell me one Russian said it."
Yeah, right. Josh Green says, "Is there anything that reacts well to bullets?" Honestly, no.
Not really. Most things take a certain amount of damage once hit with a bullet.
Yeah. Also, International Women's Day was recently, and NATO decided to tweet out a picture of some female Ukrainian soldiers. This is all well and good, except for the fact that one of them was wearing a morale patch associated with a certain political movement that we probably shouldn't be talking about on YouTube, unless you're Mark Felton, and because you have that deep British voice, so you can just get away with talking about anything. So yeah, if you want to learn more about this political movement, go to Mark Felton's channel. But yeah, NATO deleted this tweet, so there's the thing.
They forgot that screenshots are a thing.
Apparently, yes. I'll say this one for the end of the stream. Let's see. Yeah, so let's move on to the overall military situation. I think this is probably the best map I've seen recently, although I apologize for this being in Cyrillic, because all the best stuff gets posted off of Russian. It's like cross-posted from Russian Telegram channels back onto Twitter.
Which in itself is kind of frustrating.
It really is, because... And actually, speaking of getting good intelligence on what actually is happening on the ground, so over the last 10 years, this community has grown up online called the Open Source Intelligence Community, where they just troll the internet, scour everything, scour social media, and find pictures, posts, information, trying to figure out to figure out what's going on militarily. And you can learn a lot of stuff just by trolling the internet. I think one like CIA report said, the U.S. could actually fulfill about 90% of its intelligence requirements just by using open source intelligence. So there's this entire community online which is devoted to scouring through open source intelligence. I think a lot of these people are probably cutouts for certain other agencies, but we're not going to go there right now. Well, one of the problems with getting a good idea of what the hell is actually going on the ground is that the entirety, the sum total of the OSINT community decided as soon as this war started, in fact, this is a decision they made like as a collective group prior to the war. In fact, I think well prior to the war, that they were going to support the Ukrainian government as essentially agents of the Ukrainian government, which means if the Ukrainian government puts out misinformation, they will pass that misinformation on. The Ukrainian government issues them guidance, like don't post pictures of our stuff, don't post our L's, right? They will, and you've seen this, I've seen this tons of times where some OSINT dude or some like open source dude posts a photo of something they thought was Russian but was actually Ukrainian. Somebody points this out and they immediately delete it, right? It's really kind of ridiculous. The Ukrainian government, puts out a press release. They'll regurgitate it, and this is a big problem because you can see that, there are significant decision makers who are listening to this open source community to make decisions. They have a significant shaping effect on how discourse happens in the West. Well, this is an open source community which is acting as a Ukrainian agent right now. They're not giving unbiased analysis, which is a significant problem because, again, this distorts policy making. And
it distorts pretty much everything that goes on, really.
Yeah, and it's something I've had to really train myself on is, okay, so these guys, you see some video of blown up Soviet era equipment in Ukraine, and they're saying, oh, we blew up some Russian stuff, and you have to look at it and be like, is this actually Russian equipment or is this Ukrainian equipment that got blown up by the Russians? And they're just miscaptioning it, right? Things like, is this equipment we know the Russians operate? Is this the context appropriate? Are there clues indicating Russian ownership in the video, or is it and even stuff like they've even been doing things like the Ukrainian and I think Western sort of operations that are helping them have even been doing stuff like faking stuff. They've literally used deep fake technology to paint Russian recognition markings onto videos of older blown up from other conflicts, right? Literal deep fakes. So you just have to be so skeptical of stuff that's coming out right now. And I'll show you an exhibit A of this here in a minute. So just to so as far as what's happening right now, this is the situation as of today. And
Josh Graydon says, honestly, he's just sick of all the politicking, intervene or shut up, just get it over with.
Yeah, people need to either say it's a crisis and we're going to do something about it, or we're not doing any, or we're not going to treat it like a crisis because we're not doing anything about it. It's a policy matter. The whole lobbying campaign is the disgusting part. So this is the current one of the better maps I've seen as far as what the battlefield situation looks like, as far as the disputed Donbass and then basically Russian territorial control. And so what we can see here is that as of, so here's Kiev up here, and what we can see is that the Russians have really sort of driven sort of pincers around Kiev at this point. They've also at this point they also at this point seem to have so for a long time this city up here, Chernigov, there's basically a group of Ukrainian forces that are up here For a while, they had communications down to Kiev, and then the Russians seem to have encircled this quite recently. And then you can sort of see this area of northern Ukraine they control up here, up in the north. Now, there have been some pretty significant advances. There have been some pretty significant Russian attacks into the Kiev area just over the last 24 hours, and I'll show you one of these both because it's an amazing video and because it shows you how stuff gets miscaptioned. So, and this specifically has to do with the town of Brovary, which is this immediately east of Kiev. So here's a claim being made by open source intelligence militaryland.net. And this claim has been repeated endlessly by open source guys, right? Say a Russian armored column attempted to enter Brovary and, quote, they were pushed back, unquote. Well, let's see what the video shows. First of all, because this is a crazy video. Like, this is nuts. But second of all, you can see how we can ask ourselves, did the Russians actually get pushed back? And by the way, there's audio to this video, but the Ukrainians, it's just fake audio. It's a long story behind it. The Ukrainians just put some transmission they thought the Russians were making over it. So I'm not going to play that. So we see Russian tanks in town. This is in a Russian armored column moving in. This is a Russian tank, looks like. Which, by the way, you can see you can see the side here is on fire. I think this guy got hit, and his explosive reactive arm probably went off and is burning. But see, it's still in the fight. Okay, and this is so apparently this Russian column here had moved up into town and stopped, essentially stopped in this area here. And so it's one of the tanks shooting a smoke grenade launcher off. So the Ukrainians started shelling them, and you can see them moving out of town. And a couple of vehicles were knocked out there. And then you can see them moving off across the countryside. Take a look at that. That's a lot of armor. Just rolling out across the field. And oh, by the way, you notice there are some burning vehicles along this road here, basically along this tree-lined road running perpendicular to the Russian line of advance. And you can see this good view of this area out here the Russians are pushing towards. Well, so the claim being made on this video, and there's a little bit of an aftermath video. Nothing particularly. Apparently, this is somebody who was walking down that street later. So this is I think it's a burned out video. This is a couple of burned out vehicles. It's a BTR. I think there's a something. I don't know what that thing further out is, but so this is what we. So the Ukrainian claim here is, well, the Russians were pushed back. Well, and moreover, this video has been edited in a certain way to make the Russians look as bad as possible, right? But let's see what actually happens here, because in the final frame of this video here, we can see the Russians are very much moving. They're moving towards this large industrial farm here, right? So maybe the impression the Ukrainians are trying to give is, well, this is the Russians retreating. Never mind, there's two blown up vehicles here, right? But what were these vehicles doing? Well, and by the way, also you notice that the Russians left town. The Russians didn't turn around, right? They started getting hit with artillery, and they pulled out and kept moving, which is what you do if you're getting hit by artillery. I would not want to park my stuff that closely together, but I've seen American units do weirder stuff. So
yeah, that is very true.
Yeah, they were really kind of jammed up in there for a bit. But I mean, you can see that they got out in the fields and they spread out. Well, the thing is that you see this big industrial complex. We can use a little technique called geolocation. Like, let's go find where this complex is on the map, because there's satellite photos, and let's use a little technique called geolocation to figure out where this battle happened. Well, we know it happened somewhere around Brovary, right? Well, if you zoom in, there is a couple of huge square facilities here and a bunch of industrial buildings in front of them, which look very close to this. Right? You see there's sort of a couple of large, which look very close to this. And, so there's also a city behind them here, right? Well, go back to the map. We have we have this this industrial facility here. These two sort of square, I think those are like greenhouses or something. They're something weird. And then there's a forest, and then urban area behind it, and then urban area also out to the left, which lines up pretty well with what we can see on the footage. Also, here we see the Russians advancing, as near as I can tell. Let me, before we close the book on this, let me show you how I figure out where the Russians were parked. So that big Russian column, let's back this up. Here we have this big Russian column. You see these three houses with red roofs here on the right side? Yeah, three very distinctive houses. And also sort of the field here on the right side. Well, let's look at the map. Three houses with red roofs, field. So yeah, they were parked at the intersection of Volyutsky Zelena and Brovarska Street in the Velika Dneiper, and they pulled out of that, advancing towards over these fields towards the city of Brovary. Also, those vehicles which were parked, those burning vehicles, well, where were they? Looks to me like they were along this tree-lined dirt road, basically, along the edge of the field, which, coincidentally, this is about, I'm not sure that they might have been here, maybe. I need to look. Let me see where they're at. Yeah, so it looks like they were along one of the, I think probably about here. And, well, coincidentally, this is about 2.5 kilometers between here and also, by the way, you can see how the Russians had to bunch up there because all the roads going through the city sort of bottleneck here. So you can see the Ukrainians probably set up a defense, probably with anti-tank missile launchers on this road here, and their plan was, well, as the Russians come out of here single file, we're going to snipe them out. That's about 2.5 kilometers, probably the maximum effective range, and we can hit them, then we can withdraw. Clearly, the Russians had other ideas. But again, the narrative here is, well, the Russians were pushed back. Now, Katal, the question I have to ask you is, does this look like a defeat to you?
Not really, no.
Yeah, it looks like the Russians pushed clean in.
A defeat would entail most of those vehicles disabled in some way.
Yeah, I mean, if the Ukrainians had defeated this, we would see dozens of blown up Russian armored vehicles, right? We wouldn't see two, and they wouldn't be seeing a video of them advancing. Really, I mean, they're still in line ahead, right? So they're not even really advancing that tactically. They're not really even expecting contact towards the city of Brovary. Now, maybe there was a subsequent battle in Brovary that we're not hearing about, but the Ukrainians post anything they can that makes them look good, and we haven't seen anything as far as what happened to this column after they passed south. So what that's telling me is that probably the Russians took Brovary yesterday, and the Ukrainians don't want to admit it, and because of their control over like information online and their the active assistance of social media the social media ecosystem. This hasn't gotten out yet. So they're pretty effective at keeping stuff they don't want in the social media in the public out of the public eye. So there's your case study on how to detect if somebody's selling you bullshit. So this is a pro-Russian open source guy. There are a few of these dudes. Mostly getting their information off of like Russian, like Cyrillic Telegram. But this is apparently what the Russians have pushed into in the last 24 hours. And this arrow on the right-hand side, this is them pushing into Brovary. Let's see. Moving around further to the east, there's the Russians are still more or less encircled the city of. I talked about Chernigov a little bit earlier. There's not a lot of information coming out around Chernigov up north of Kiev. There's fighting happening, absolutely, but there's not a ton of info coming out of there. A lot of the info that is coming out of there is bad. Like some video came out today showing a bunch of knocked out tanks, but I'm pretty sure they were Ukrainian tanks they were claiming were Russian. So it's the usual. God knows how old it was too. So the usual bullshit. Further east, Sumy remains surrounded. The Russians have been actually trying to evacuate civilians out of here, and Kharkov is not surrounded. It's sort of the Russians are kind of pushing in at it, but they really seem to mostly just be screwing it.
Yeah.
Mostly because it looks like there's a couple of interesting things happening. Over the last week, the Russians have pushed out of their sort of controlled areas here and up and around to the east side of Kharkov, and they're starting to come down south. And so there's a lot of Ukrainian troops who were stationed here pre-war, butting up against these independent Russian-held areas in Ukraine's far east. So that the Ukrainians had a lot of their army, about 30-40% of it stationed here pre-war. Well, they're still there and they're still fighting, but they're slowly getting. But the Russians have slowly been surrounding them. They haven't been doing it very fast, but they've been. I think because they're still having to. They're putting up a lot of resistance.
That could be.
The Russians have sort of been slowly closing the fingers around it, and also for the last week they've been fighting their way into Mariupol, which is a city down here on the Sea of Azov. Now, there's one very interesting development that came out today. Actually, let me pull up this map. This map shows it much better. So before today, this area here, I'm highlighting on the map here. This area was Ukrainian controlled. What came out in the last 24 hours was the Russians pushed into this area, and as near as I can tell, they pushed in a pretty big way. And so the thing is, if the Russians are pushing forces around the southeast side of Kiev here, they're going to hit the Dneiper River on this side at some point. I'd say probably in the next couple of days. And if the Russians say push this group of troops north, and there's two. Push this group of troops north and establish a blocking position basically between on the bend of the Dnieper here. well, at this point, they would have encircled essentially the entire Ukrainian army in the east. It would not be this would be a gigantic encirclement, but they would still be cut off. So they would be cut off from the capital, and they wouldn't be able to retreat to the west of the country. And I think that's what the next major move the Russians are going to do is they're going to push. They're going to. So they haven't been really driving in the pincers on the east side of the Dneiper very. I don't want to say very enthusiastically. They've been pushing, but they haven't been pushing that hard, which makes me think they're going to attack elsewhere. And everything I've seen says the Ukrainians don't have a lot of stuff west of the Dneiper. I think they have, maybe a brigade hanging out here. This is mostly because, well, for the last couple of weeks after the Russians pushed out and took Kherson, took these bridges here, they've sort of been kind of skirmishing in this area, but they haven't been doing a whole hell of a lot. Well, 15 days, 2 weeks, is because they took this stuff on, D+1. Well, 2 weeks is a lot of time to build up a big fist of striking power, and then they can push that, put that whole thing across the river into this area, this bridgehead they've secured, and then punch that north. They did that, and then this whole group of forces in the east, that's going to wither on the vine. Now, it's going to take a long time to wither on the vine because it's a huge area to operate in, right? At a certain point, like you're surrounded, okay, but we surrounded you in like your entire country. So, but it would really that would pretty much set conditions for the Russians to clean up the entire east side of the Dneiper River.
Well, and I mean, the Russians they can afford to just take their time too.
Yeah. Now, that's the other thing. Like, the Russians are going to fight this war on their schedule. I was expecting a fairly quick war, but there's what the Russians have been doing, particularly over the last week. Like, they've been doing really using their Syrian playbook to an extent, as far as evacuating. As far as saying, okay, we'll set up a ceasefire in the city and then evacuate all the non-combatants, and then this way we can go in and shoot the place up and level everything, and we're not going to kill a bunch of civilians. So it seems to me like they've been trying to take a page out of that playbook, and that's a long term. That's something that takes a lot of time, and it seems to be something they're comfortable doing. So I think the sort of Western expectations the Russians would try to fight a very quick war, I think has probably been it was probably unfounded. Certainly the Russians fought a very quick war in the first 48 hours, but what they did in that first 48 hours was they dislocated, they disrupted the Ukrainian military to the point that it really couldn't, to the point that it was in many cases cut into pockets, and then what the Russians have been doing since then is just tightening their grip on those pockets, and they set conditions for victory very fast, and then they've been taking their time. They've been taking their time achieving that, which is interesting. But so yeah, that's really where we stand right now. Josh Graydon says, so cripple and now eating piecemeal. Yeah, that's I think that's what's happening. So the thing is, I think at this point the Ukrainians do not have a lot left in Western Ukraine. I think they've committed most of their troops to either defending Kiev, defending Odessa, or reinforcing this eastern bloc here. And they're once this eastern bloc gets cut off, well, that's probably half their army. And
I'd say at least instead of pulling back, they're honestly kind of walking right into where Russia wants them.
Yeah, the Russian position right now is very good because the Ukrainians have had plenty of opportunities to collapse this position. And I've seen some commentators saying, oh, well, the Russians should have just cut off this position immediately. Well, sure, great, but at this point, if the Russians had just tried to concentrate in this one area, then nothing would have prevented the Ukrainians from balling up some huge mass of forces. And I've said this earlier, the balance of power here is not so overwhelming in Russian favor that that the Ukrainians can conceivably win the war, right? If they were able to set up a successful defense. What the Russians have done here is essentially prevented them completely from setting up a coherent defense, because they've chopped them into a bunch of pockets, and now they're just able to reduce those one by one. So Josh Green had a good question on what's the blue on the map. So the blue on the map is Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast in Ukraine. So these are disputed territories. They seceded from Ukraine in 2014, and the dark blue is Russian-controlled disputed territory, and the light blue is Ukraine-controlled disputed. So, yeah, I mean, as far as some other rumors I've heard going forward, I've seen some rumors I wouldn't consider to be super credible, saying that the Russians might launch an offensive way far to the west, basically aimed at Lvov. It's a city.
I don't know why they would do that. That would be a bit of an overextension.
Yeah, I don't know myself. I think they want to just keep pushing forces in here. The reasoning was essentially that they would be concerned about intercepting the flow of weapons from NATO, so they'd want to secure this border. But that being said,
NATO really isn't sending Ukraine very much in the way of weapons, anyways.
Yeah, that being said, I mean everything I've seen so far indicates that what NATO has been sending. We've said this on stream before. What NATO has been sending is not a game changer on the battlefield. It's shoulder-fired weapons that replicate capabilities the Ukrainians already have. Because they're a post-Soviet state. They have the full arsenal of Soviet anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft missiles. Is Javelin really that much better than an AT-5? It's a better weapon, yes, but it does the same thing. And this is actually interesting. Is that I think the whole. I mean, honestly, I think one of the biggest losers out of this conflict has been the reputation, I would say, of the Javelin missile, because in this entire war, and I've been following a lot of just about everything that came out. I haven't seen I've seen a single fired Javelin launch tube that somebody dropped on the ground. I've seen a couple of live Javelin rounds. I've seen people posing with Javelin missiles, with the launch tubes. Apparently, I've seen the Russians captured one of them. They had it loaded on the back of the BTR. And I've seen one video which might have been a tank getting hit by a Javelin, but I have not seen in this entire war any picture of the Ukrainians firing a Javelin. It's been 2 weeks. So either they have them, and we know they're out there because we've seen a few of them in the east, but I haven't seen You'd think if these were some really great weapon system was going to turn the tide, the Ukrainians would be heavily emphasizing this, and I've barely seen any evidence of their use, which is surprising. I mean, it's very surprising to me, but I'm thus far it seems like the Ukrainians are barely using them, and I'm not sure they're using them effectively. Which for something we really hyped up going in is for something that was supposed to be the pinnacle, one of the pinnacle weapons of the American military industrial complex, that isn't quite the showing we were expecting. which it is kind of what I have seen a lot of are like British NLAWs. Those seem to be getting a decent amount of use out of them, but it's a semi-guided shoulder-fired rocket. It's not anything crazy. So yeah, that being said, I think that wraps up the current situation pretty well. You have any questions or things you'd like to talk about, Kanal?
I do not, although Josh Graydon says no, they're just waving Ukrainian flags. It's a game changer tactically. I'm not sure if he's trying to joke or if he's... I have no idea what he means here.
I think he's being sarcastic, but...
That's my guess. I mean, it was when we were talking about the Ukrainians not having done anything tactically.
Yeah. Well, just remember, you can absolutely turn on the tide of the war by putting a Ukrainian flag in your Twitter in your Twitter handle.
Right.
That will show Putin he needs to back off.
I mean, that's essentially what NATO has done. That's.
Yeah, I think honestly, what NATO's done has been they've fallen exactly between the two stools of the one.
Yeah, that's what he meant. NATO assistance to the Ukraine is flag waving.
Pretty much, yeah. So I mean, you have the one stool, which is accept that the Russians have a sphere of influence, and we're not going to push NATO into that sphere of influence. That maybe, trying to get the Russian version of Texas into NATO might have been a bad idea that the Russians might have felt was a threat.
Right.
And then, so the one stool is, well, we're going to back off. The other stool is we're going to, at a minimum, support Ukraine with heavy weapons. And by the way, we should have started doing this 8 years ago. So they would have had, so instead of trying to fight the Russians with refurbished T-64s from 1964, they would be fighting the Russians with Leopard 2s and like Eurofighters, right? That would be like that would have probably been a game changer. If NATO had properly equipped the Ukrainians, or going even further, we're going to, 2014, 2015, we will actually, any time in the last 8 years, NATO could have said, U.S. NATO could have said, no, we're actually going to send troops in the Ukraine, station them there, and we're signing an alliance with the Ukrainians, and we'll fight for the Ukrainian nation. Like that probably would have stood this off. But the current plan of we're going to give the Ukrainians a lot of handheld weapons and just hope they inflict a lot of damage on the Russians. Well, guess what? That isn't going to stop the bear. It's just going to piss the bear off. And when the bear gets pissed off, it's going to you're just setting up the Ukrainians to just get mauled. You're going to get the Ukrainians mauled, and you're going to get the Russians angry. And well, I mean, the thing is, turnabout is fair play, right? If there are all the states in the Baltic. Let me get my map up here. Did I close out my map? My map. So the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. All of these countries, which are currently members of NATO and the European Union. Well, all these countries used to be part of Russia. In fact, used to be part of Russia for a long time. This is a historic part of Russia, and there are significant Russian-speaking minorities in these countries. And by the way, the national governments don't necessarily treat that well because they consider them to be a potential threat. Probably with good reason, but so far the Russians haven't been doing anything to make good on that potential threat. But after this war is over, there's nothing stopping the Russians from doing a AK and RPG handout to Russian speakers in the Baltic states and just letting that burn, right? because again, at NATO right here, well, we're pushing I think at the last count was some 17,000 pieces of ordnance into Ukraine with the explicit purpose of killing Russians. Well, I don't see how after this war is over, the Russians don't start looking at opportunities to do the same thing to the U.S., the European Union, and NATO, the Western Bloc. Because I guarantee you, the Russians are pissed about this. they're not going to they're not going to stop getting pissed for a long time. We have Josh Green saying, the absolute best way to fight a bear is to pick up and shake its cub in front of it. That asserts your dominance. That's almost what we're doing here. Is we're picking up the bear cub and shaking it in front of the bear. and thinking this is going to turn out well. So with that being said,
I'm not sure there's a lot Russia will be able to do about Poland, just because Poland already has experience with the Russians, and they seem to be hunkering down, digging in.
Yeah, if I was in the Polish army right now, I would be telling if I was like a general in the Polish army, I would be telling my government we need to start digging ditches, right? Along the border with Belarus.
Massive friggin' ditches.
Yeah, by when war comes, our anti-tank, we need to have like 5 anti-tank ditches, and they need to be 2 or 3 kilometers behind each other with firing positions throughout, and then they need to be like 20 feet deep.
Right, and there need, at least some of them need to be mined.
Yeah, like we need to basically dig a canal from the Baltic Sea and just extend that all the way down from the border all the way down to Slovakia. Like, we need to invest in some bulldozers because this shit is about to get real. I mean, I really think that the era of we'll just assume that land war in Europe isn't a thing anymore. That era died 2 weeks ago, and it's a whole new world. And all that being said, I think we'll close up here. So, I know I make jokes about this, but this is a. I know I'm sometimes a little bit lighthearted, but this is a very serious subject, and a lot of people have died in the Ukraine recently, and will continue to die. Russians and Ukrainians both, and we should really.
I don't think any of us have made a joke that wasn't made by some other idiot already.
Yeah, we're pretty much what we're doing is a little bit of dark humor here, but yeah, I mean, I just say for the stream here, but pray for a just resolution of the conflict and a restoration of peace, because
if we don't get that, the U.S. and a few other nations are probably on Russia's hit list.
Yeah, war seems very exciting until it comes to your doorstep, and then it's as General Sherman once said, it's all hell. So with that being said, if you're interested in my book or in Katala's YouTube channel, links are in the description. And see you all later. Night, everyone.
Night, guys.